Hi there everyone. I hope you enjoyed the intro. I'm so excited to share this new line of AOS frames with you today. And this is the AOS EVO line of frames. And EVO stands for evolution because I've taken all of my existing AOS frames and upgraded them with some key features that loads of you have been requesting. The main features are that we now have soft mounting, not just for the DJI O3 camera and the WalkSnail Avatar V2 cameras with the gyro, but also pretty much any 19 or 20mm FPV camera, and hardpoints for panel mount XT60 connectors. So if you're someone who likes to mount their battery connector on the top plate really securely with a panel mount connector, or use a 3D print to secure it really tightly, then you now have hardpoints to make that really easy to do. In this video, I'm going to be taking you through all the new features of the AOS EVO frames on the bench. I'm going to be showing you where you can find outline drawings, exploded diagrams, and STL files for 3D prints for these frames so that you can plan your build out. And I'm also going to be showing you where, if you want to, you can order your AOS EVO frame today. It's a lot to cover in one video, so let's not waste any more time. Let's dive right into it. Alright, so let's take a look at some of the new features on these AOS EVO frames. And I have here the AOS 5 EVO and the AOS 3.5 EVO as an example, but these changes are common across all the EVO frames. Let's start with the camera mounting. Now, as you can see, the AOS EVO frames have this soft camera mount. It's a custom silicon mold, and it allows you to mount not just the O3 camera, but also a whole range of 19 and 20mm cameras as well. And the way it achieves this is this soft part here is reversible. So you can either have the two holes closer to the front, and that's what you're going to use for the O3 camera, or you can spin it around and have the two holes closer to the rear. And that's what you're going to want to use for the WalkSnail Avatar V2 cameras, like this V2 Pro I have in here. Also, you'll notice there is a single slot for a center screw camera. So something like, this is an old Caddx Polar, but it demonstrates the idea. You can actually mount the Caddx Polar in here with one screw on the single slot, and then it's also going to be soft mounted in there. So no matter what type of camera you have, you should be able to get it to fit inside this, this molded camera mount here. Another feature of this new camera cage is that it fully supports the ND filters for the DJI O3 system. The camera plates are spaced 23mm apart, and that gives you plenty of clearance to pop a 22mm ND filter onto the lens, just like that. Assembling the EVO camera cage isn't difficult by any means, but it gets a lot easier if you know a couple of tips and tricks. To start with, you're going to want to figure out which way round you need the soft mount inside the camera plate. So take your camera and just try it out with the soft mount in the position with the long slot at the front. And we can see that the camera protrudes in front of the protection there. And that doesn't look good. That's not going to be what we want. So you can go ahead and flip the part around. Now the slot's at the back, and we can try it again. Yeah. So that's going to be perfect. That's the way round we're going to want the soft mounted part. Once we've figured out where the soft mount part goes, we're going to build the camera pod. And the camera pod consists of the camera, any shims that you're going to need to use, and the two soft mounts. Depending on the width of the camera and how tightly you want it to feel inside the camera cage, you're going to want to shim it out. Now, if you want the camera nice and loose, you're not going to need any shims with O3, and you're going to need some thin shims with a 19mm camera. But if you want the camera to be nice and firm in the camera cage, so it requires a bit of force and it's not going to move on its own, then you're just going to want to shim it out a little bit. Your frame kit will come with carbon fiber shims that support 19 or 20mm cameras, but I've also put STL files on AOSRC.com for the soft camera mount in a whole range of thicknesses that support cameras from 14mm all the way up to 20mm. And you might prefer to use those 3D printed mounts so that you can get that fit just right without having to use any shims at all. So what you're going to do to build the pod is take the camera, put the shim in place, and then take the soft mount and screw that little stack together. You do that for both sides, and that's going to give you the little camera pod. This is so much easier to do before we install the pod into the camera cage. So once you have that little pod assembled, you can go ahead and grab one side of the camera cage, check which way up the camera goes, and then install the 3D print into the carbon fiber part there. And take the other part of the camera cage and just pop it on top. Don't worry if it's all a bit higgledy-piggledy at this stage. Once you start to put the screws in, it's all gonna tighten up and snug down nicely. And that's the camera cage all assembled. All you'll then need to do is install that into the quad and you'll be good to go. And you can see I've shimmed this camera quite a lot, and as a result, I can adjust the angle, but it's very stiff. If you wanted it a bit looser because you like to adjust the camera in the field, then you just use thinner shims. So that's the camera cage. Let's move on and talk about the other features. If you're looking for more information to help you plan your AOS EVO build, I've added exploded diagrams and outline drawings to aosrc.com alongside STL files for common 3D prints for all the frames. Hopefully everything you need is there, but if it's not, please don't hesitate to drop me an email. Now let's look at the XT60 mounting options. And the focus here again is on versatility to let you do what you want to do with your build. So if you like to have your XT60 coming out of the side or the back of the frame, there's no change, you can still do that absolutely fine. But what I've done is adjust the cutouts in the front of the frame so that if you like to use a panel mount connector, you have these hard points here where you can mount that. So you have two positions for the cutouts in the AOS 5. You have a forward position, which is going to be right if you like your battery mounted in the middle of the frame and you don't run a GoPro. And then I also have this rear position here a bit further back, which is going to be perfect if you have a GoPro mounted up front and you're going to want your battery in the back half of the top plate. The cutouts here are perfect for the AOS XT60 EM and EW style panel mount connectors. So whichever of those you prefer or is more available, you can use. But also, if you like a traditional XT60, you can secure it using a simple 3D print like I have here, and I think this is a really nice solution. You can secure that with M2 screws, I found works best for XT60s, and you can have it in either the rear or the forward position. It's just going to make it a lot easier and more secure to mount your XT60 in the frame. Obviously, you can still have the XT60 as a pigtail coming out of the front, as I know lots of you like to mount it. And in that case, I would suggest just having a little 3D print maybe to hold the wires as they come through. And I'll put an STL for that on AOS RC as well, just so that the wires don't come into contact with the carbon of the frame. With these smaller AOS EVO frames like this AOS 3.5, we still have these hard points to secure the XT60 or anything else you want to really. And they still have the same spacing, so it's still 20.5 millimeters center to center. But now these are M2 holes so that they match the M2 hardware on the rest of the frame. And again, you can use a 3D print from aosrc.com to secure your XT30 or to just hold the wires as the pigtail passes through the top plate in this location. And again, you can position it forward or backwards to best fit with the GoPro mount that you might have up front, or moving it forwards to allow you to center mount the battery. Again, it's all about versatility and it's all about what you want to do with your build. But hopefully these extra mounting points are going to give you a little bit more to work with. Now I want to talk about compatibility. I know loads of you are flying O3 designs, and I want to let you know that there's a lot of interchangeability between O3 and EVO frames. The braces on the bottom of the frame and the arms are identical between O3 frames and these new EVO frames. The differences are in the camera plates and the top and bottom plate. So those are not interchangeable between the designs because the camera plate spacing has changed from 20 to 23 millimeters. And obviously we have some of the new features on the top plate as well. If you decide to upgrade to an AOS EVO frame, you will be able to use all your O3 arms and brace plates as spares for the new design. If you'd like to upgrade to an AOS EVO frame, they're available from cncdrones.com today with your choice of hardware, either button head or countersunk, and different standoff colours as well. At the moment you can get them in black carbon fibre, but if you want something a little bit more snazzy, you'll have to wait about a week before Nick makes the coloured versions of AOS EVO frames available on the site as well. I'll make sure to put a link down in the video description and a pinned comment once those are available. I'm also pleased to say that iFlight will be transitioning their production of AOS frames and bind and flies to this new EVO version over the next few weeks, so keep an eye out for those. I'd like to end with a huge thank you to all of you who've supported me through my Patreon and Buy Me a Coffee and AOS over the last couple of years, particularly those of you who've emailed me with feedback and suggestions for how to make AOS frames even better. I hope you enjoy these new designs and I'm really looking forward to hearing what you think of them. That's all that I have for you for today, so until next time, I wish you all very, very happy flying.